Where does your spiritual food come from? Knowing the source of your spiritual food is the most important condition to good spiritual health. What happened to the original Bible, the spiritual food God imparted to us? The original manuscripts of the New Testament books are not known to have survived. The autographs are believed to have been lost or destroyed a long time ago. What survived are only copies of the originals. Most of those scrolls are in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, but both Jordan and the Palestinian Authority have disputed their ownership. Qumran in the West Bank, the site where the first scrolls were found, is part of land seized by Israel in the 1967 war and would be part of a future Palestinian state, but hopefully that will happen soon. The Bible was written over the course of almost a century after Jesus' death. The four Gospels of the New Testament, though they tell the same story, reflect very different ideas and concerns. A period of 40 years separates the death of Jesus from the writing of the first Gospel. The Muratorian Canon, which is believed to date to 200 AD, is the earliest compilation of canonical texts resembling the New Testament. It was not until the 5th century that all the different Christian churches came to a basic agreement on biblical canon. Constantine's decision to cease the persecution of Christians in the Roman Empire was a turning point for early Christianity, sometimes referred to as the triumph of the Church, the peace of the Church, or the Constantinian shift. Overall, in 393 CE the Council of Hippo was a significant event in the history of Christianity. It established the canonical books of the Christian Bible, clarified doctrinal issues, and set forth rules for church governance. The Gospel of Mary is an early Christian text deemed unorthodox by the men who shaped the nascent Catholic Church, was excluded from the canon, and was subsequently erased from the history of Christianity along with most narratives that demonstrated women's contributions to the early Christian movement. Catholic Bibles, however, have not varied since the original canon was approved at the Council of Hippo in 397 AD. In 1498, the Inquisition stated that it was impossible to translate the Bible into a modern language without making mistakes that would plunge unskilled and especially new converts into doubts about faith. There exists a consensus among scholars that the language of Jesus and his disciples was Aramaic. Those writings were later translated to Greek. The villages of Nazareth and Capernaum in Galilee, where Jesus spent most of his time, were Aramaic-speaking communities. Historians and linguists generally agree that Sumerian, Akkadian and Egyptian are the oldest languages with a clear written record. From these languages came Hebrew, then Greek, which the Bible is written in. Some suggest our heavenly language will be music, which is understood in any language, or perhaps it will be the language of love, God's love returned to him and others. For the ordinary Catholic in earlier centuries, exposure to Scripture was passive. They heard it read aloud or prayed aloud but did not read it themselves. Is love the main theme of Christianity and other religions? There have been many periods of persecution of Jews, religious conflicts between Catholics and Protestants in 16th and 17th century Europe, the execution of hundreds of Christians in 17th century Japan, the Mormon expulsion from Missouri and Illinois in the 1840s, the Branch Davidian conflagration, the massacre of Muslims in Kosovo, and the continuing conflicts between Muslim Pakistan and Hindu India are but a few examples of how perceptions of outsider religious groups can turn to violence. The great series of Western holy wars were the Crusades, which lasted from 1095 until 1291 CE. The aim was to capture the sacred places in the Holy Land from the Muslims who lived there, so it was intended as a war to right wrongs done against Christianity. Martin Luther began the Protestant Reformation with the publication of his 95 Theses on October 31, 1517. Luther's belief in justification by faith led him to question the Catholic Church's practices of self-indulgence. He objected not only to the Church's greed but to the very idea of indulgences. He did not believe the Catholic Church had the power to pardon people's sins. Why were the 7 books removed from the Bible? There are 7 books in the Catholic Bible: Baruch, Judith, 1 and 2 Maccabees, Sirach, Tobit and Wisdom, that are not included in the Protestant version of the Old Testament. These books are referred to as the deuterocanonical books. Martin Luther, assuming the Masoretic text to be the original, removed them to match this new Jewish canon. William Tyndale was an English scholar and priest who successfully translated the New Testament of the Bible into English in 1525. He went into hiding in Germany in order to complete this task. He began working on the Old Testament but was executed for heresy before he could complete it. Tyndale was hunted by the Church on the continent, betrayed by an Englishman for pay and condemned to die a heretic. He was tied to a stake, strangled with a rope and torched outside a castle near Brussels on October 6, 1536. Why did King James change the Bible? To settle disagreements over reforms in the Church of England and respond to pressure from the Puritans, King James in 1604 approved a new translation of the Bible, primarily because he knew that it would reinforce his image as a political and spiritual leader. Many use the English King James Version or Authorized Version, published in 1611, but this has been one of the most debated English versions. What king broke England away from the Roman Church? King Henry VIII's break with the Catholic Church is one of the most far-reaching events in English history. During the Reformation, the king replaced the Pope as the head of the Church in England, causing a bitter divide between Catholics and Protestants. What Bible is closest to the original? The Geneva Bible is one of the most historically significant translations of the Bible into English, preceding the King James Version by 51 years. What is the best argument against Jehovah's Witnesses? The Jehovah's Witness movement's leaders have been accused of practicing doctrinal inconsistencies and making doctrinal reversals, making failed predictions, mistranslating the Bible, harshly treating former Jehovah's Witnesses, and leading the Jehovah's Witness movement in an autocratic and coercive manner. What is the Jehovah's Witnesses scandal? Cover-up allegations. In some cases, members of Jehovah's Witnesses have been prevented or deterred from reporting child molestation to civil authorities. Particularly since around 2000, the Jehovah's Witnesses organization has been accused of covering up cases of child molestation committed by its members. Why is Jehovah's Witness banned in some countries? Jehovah's Witnesses have struggled to have their beliefs and practices accepted in some parts of the world. The group has faced court proceedings in several countries, mostly over its pacifism and rejection of blood transfusions. Russia banned the group in 2017. Is the New World Translation of the Bible accurate? In 1963, theologian Anthony A. Hoekema wrote, "Their New World Translation of the Bible is by no means an objective rendering of the sacred text into modern English, but is a biased translation in which many of the peculiar teachings of the Watchtower Society are smuggled into the text of the Bible itself." Dr. William Barclay, a leading Greek scholar, said, "It is abundantly clear that a sect which can translate the New Testament like that is intellectually dishonest." The New World Translation, including all other Bibles today, assure us in 2 Timothy chapter 3 verse 16 that all scriptures are inspired of God. In Revelations 22:19, the Bible warns the translators, "If anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God will take away his share in the tree of life and in the holy city, which are described in this book." How many times has the Bible been changed? Over 30,000 changes were made, of which more than 5,000 represent differences between the Greek text used for the Revised Version and that used as the basis of the King James Version. Most of the other changes were made in the interest of consistency, modernization, or to fit a certain dogma, as in the case of the Watchtower. Now, all you need is a huge amount of faith to accept that the God of the universe inspired all of these men to relay his message to us. The Bible's definition of faith is from Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1, it reads, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." The dictionary's definition of faith: strong belief in God or in the doctrines of a religion, based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. For me to accept the Bible today, I would have to have faith that man and the religions that have translated the Bible were all inspired of God. If one person in the translation chain throughout history was lacking inspiration, our Bible today would not reflect God's pure thoughts. The question is, do I have enough faith in the men throughout history to translate God's thoughts accurately? My answer is from the Bible. Psalm chapter 118 verse 8 reads, "It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man."
And also, the governing body is neither inspired nor infallible, and so it can err in doctrinal matters or in organizational direction. Well, knowing this, then, we are not embarrassed about adjustments that are made, nor is an apology needed for not getting it exactly right previously. We understand this is how Jehovah operates. He reveals matters gradually when it is needed.
Thanks for watching.